Welcome to Your Legislators, a production of KRWG Broadcasting. Your Legislators is a public service program providing our viewing and listening audiences in southern New Mexico the opportunity to hear about important legislative issues directly from their elected representatives in Santa Fe. Now here is your host, Carlos Correa.
Welcome to Your Legislators, also being broadcast on KRWG 90.7 FM Las Cruces. I'm Carlos Correa, joined this week by Senator Mary Jane Garcia. She joins us from our studios in Santa Fe. Senator Garcia, thanks for being with us. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And Senator Garcia, there are several bills that you are sponsoring this legislative session, and a lot of them have to do with children. Before we get into the specifics, can you tell me a little bit about where your passion is for them?
Yes. We had a very significant child abuse forum, I think it was in July, and from that forum I learned that there was a lot of need for certain things to do to prevent child abuse and to eliminate it, or at least to try to stop it. But one of the things that came out of that forum, Carlos, is that the policemen needed more training. So that's going to be one of the bills that's in the package. I came in with a package of about 5 bills. And so the one, Senate Bill 76, requires a child abuse problem study, which will be, and that passed already the Senate, 1916. It's gone to the House Education and then to the House Judiciary. The one for training for police, 77, that is a major one. And I talked to some of the police and to the chief, and they said that the child abuse training is included in the basic training, but not in the biannual, not the in-service training. So we want to make that get more training in there for the police. And one example given by an undersheriff in Las Cruces at that forum was that oftentimes if a policeman goes to a home, a domestic violence, the couple will be fighting, and they may not notice the little kid on the corner all bruised, or that there might be 2 children in the next room that have been abused physically. And so that's why this is so important. I think that one has a very good chance. It's already passed Public Affairs and Judiciary and Finance, so it's on the Senate floor today. I hope to get that bill on training through today. Then we have a public awareness campaign for children. I've noticed that, we've done very well in the area of DWI because of we have signs all over New Mexico every few miles, and there you see another sign, report DWI. Why couldn't say we could say report child abuse and then a number, very much like what we've done with DWI. And the bill does appropriate $150,000. I've met with the Secretary of CYFD, Children, Youth, and Families, and they're very interested in this measure it's to create more public awareness and education about how bad it's become a real epidemic in New Mexico, the child abuse issue. So I hope to pass that. It went through Public Affairs. It's headed to Finance.
And Senator Garcia,
tomorrow.
that bill
Yes,
that you
sir.
spoke about, that you wanted to include child abuse incident training for police officers around the state,
Yes.
Do you think that that's something that should have happened years ago? Why now?
That should have happened years ago, and perhaps we wouldn't have had the number of death of children that we've had. If we had done this maybe 10 years ago, it would have created more awareness and more training for police to be able to identify what child abuse means. And I think we could have maybe saved a few children. There's been too many children getting killed almost daily, and I just can't take that as a legislator who adores children. And I think that it takes the whole community, all of us, to work on that together in a collaborative manner. CYFD, with the executive, with the legislature, with the advocates, on and on, the schools, we all need to get involved in that. So then the other one that I have is Senate Bill 213, which is when you leave a child in the car and it's dehydrated or the little child is cold or hot, then it could die. So we want to make that part of the child abuse crimes. and that has passed in Public Affairs. It's headed to Judiciary. So in other words, I'm doing very well in my package of child abuse that I came here with. I have also introduced and passed on the Senate floor already an anti-bullying prevention program for schools. And the school, like the local school boards, are going to have to come up with some, they have to develop some kind of guidelines for school districts. And then every school will be required to implement a program on bullying and see how they're going to address that issue.
And Senator Garcia, I think it's safe to say that bullying has been around for many years. Are there other ways that we can help either prevent it from happening in school, in middle schools specifically, and high schools in the state?
Exactly. We can help prevent it. You know, we have to teach our kids that that behavior is totally unacceptable. But it's not just bullying among kids themselves. There's other types of bullying, and we've heard all those issues. But we want zero bullying in the schools, in public places, wherever, and that's what this bill is attempting to do. I also introduced Senate Bill 100, and there's two bills 100. So tonight we're going to have what we call the 100th bill party. I will be one of the sponsors in the Senate. Representative Nora Espinosa, a Republican, would be the sponsor in the House. And we did the bill of social promotion together. That is House Bill 100. My Senate Bill 100 decreases oil and gas severance tax rates. And actually, it's what I call pencils and not pork. This would let our pork, for 3 years, withhold our pork and let it go to the school emergency fund. And so we need to ensure that we have more pencils than us taking home all this pork. That's what that one does. That's already passed education, and it's headed to finance. There's one on domestic abuse victim photo cost. One of the undersheriff himself came to talk to me about that one. And when, you know, victims of domestic violence, we want them to be able to obtain photos documenting the pattern of abuse free of charge. A lot of these women, oftentimes, they're very, very poor, they're very, very scared, and they don't have money to buy photographs. And in fact, the police would also need those photographs for the court. So that one already passed. It's headed to finance. Public Affairs and Judiciary gave it a due pass. And the one that I passed last night that is very important, and it passed through Public Affairs without a single negative vote, both bipartisan, is what I call enact the Local Government Transparency Act. You will recall that last year Senator Rue introduced and passed a law on state transparency, where all the state agencies will have to put online the contracts that they give, who they give them to, who their manpower is, how much their salaries would be, things like that. I feel that the New Mexicans that want transparency, as I do, would want us to do that throughout the state at all levels of government. So this is for local governments, Class A, communities that have more than, 30,000 or 15,000 people. That would apply to most cities in New Mexico.
Why do you think that's needed around the state?
What's that?
Why do you think that's needed around New Mexico?
Well, because it would go to all the local governments. It would go to all the communities that are, those even that are not, some communities are not incorporated. They're at the mercy of the counties. So this would give the average New Mexican, and if they don't have a computer, they could borrow some with a neighbor to see online what kind of contracts are being issued. Are they New Mexican companies that are coming in? What are their wages? The same as the state would be, but this is at the local level for municipalities and counties. That's what that one does.
Do you think
I also
that
have a state.
Do you think that it would keep local governments accountable?
That's what we're trying to do. Keep local governments accountable as well as the state. Because, you know, I think that the average citizen, average New Mexican taxpayer and voter wants that transparency. And when Senator Rue passed that bill last year for the state, I really liked it. I worked with him and I said, I want to do that for the local governments as well. And it passed without a single vote of opposition in Public Affairs last night. It'll go probably to Judiciary and then onto the floor. The other one that I do have a State Ethics Commission, but it hasn't moved yet. I've been trying to move the child abuse and the bullying bills through, and I'm doing very
Senator
well with
Garcia,
them. Thank you.
Speaking
Yes.
of bullying, what do you think about school districts around New Mexico that are already taking a proactive approach by setting up bully prevention plans in schools?
I didn't hear that at all. I'm sorry.
What do you think about school districts in New Mexico that are already taking a proactive approach to bullying and setting up bully prevention plans in the schools?
I am very proud of those schools that are doing that. In fact, one of them is in my district. I believe that Conley has taken the lead in Las Cruces in that regard, and I'm very proud of them. I want every school district to do what Conley has done. And because there is a law already against it, but nobody has done anything. It's just been there in the back burner. We need to bring that as a mandate. You will have an anti-bullying guideline. You will have a program by this time. I think the programs are next year.
Why is this bullying bill important to you?
It's very important to me because I cannot listen to a young gay boy from Rutgers University committing suicide because he was bullied on cyberspace, online. And that's happening too much. That is really proliferating now, the cyber bullying. And my bill includes that too. It has to. There was a young girl that committed suicide through this kind of bullying on the TV, on the computers. And I love children. They're our greatest resource. I don't want them to believe that if we do nothing about bullying, that we actually embrace or support any type of discrimination. Kids discriminate against other kids because they're too fat, they're too skinny, they're too whatever, their ethnic background, their religion, whatever it might be. That needs to stop. Children need to be taught early on that they need to love their little friends in school, which will be their mates as they grow. And I'm a very violent, free person. I don't like violence against children, against animals, against seniors, against women, against anybody. And we can make this world better if we do that.
Will this legislation pass on to homes? For example, there's a lot of education regarding this legislation where school districts are educating students, but will that flow into homes and educating parents?
You know, I would hope so, because a lot of it begins in the home. You know, a child just learns what he sees at home happening, you know, and if he sees a lot of violence in his home, that's why I've always related, for example, animal abuse to, you know, a child killing a cat, cutting the legs or the tail off a dog. When that kid grows up, he's going to grow up to be a murderer and do those things to adults, to grown-ups. And we can put a stop to that. You know, even in the animal abuse bill that I did, extreme cruelty to animals, we had a clause in there that would ensure that those kids doing those sorts of things to animals would receive counseling and be taught that that behavior also is not acceptable.
Senator Garcia, I want to take a moment to remind our listeners on KRWG 90.7 FM Las Cruces that you're listening to Your Legislators. I'm Carlos Correa with this week's guest, Senator Mary Jane Garcia. Senator Garcia, when you introduced a bill to establish a child abuse public awareness campaign, what did you envision that would be like in communities around the state?
Are you talking about the media campaign?
Yes.
On child abuse? What I envision, for starts, we need to have some kind of a collaborative effort to work together with children, youth, and family, with the law enforcement, with the executive, with legislators in a big group coming together and saying, how can we address this problem? How can we stop bullying? Where do we start? Well, we need to create public awareness and educate the public that this is unacceptable, that those kids are going to fall by the wayside, they're going to end up, and I keep telling them, if you don't educate yourself, go and learn the computers. When I go into the classroom, you're going to end up, you have like 3 choices. You'll end up dead in a drive-by shooting, or you'll end up in prison, or you'll end up cleaning the roads on those in the orange uniforms. Today's kids are so bright and so intelligent. They just need some kind of support from not only the legislature, but also their parents. A lot of parents are failing their children, unfortunately, and we would hope that the parents would also come around. I know one year I introduced a bill, grandparents as parents, and that really took on. And I went to the park there in Las Cruces, and there were so many grandmothers, grandfathers telling me their stories about how their daughter left or their son left, got hooked on drugs. We can stop those behaviors and start teaching our kids. And I believe that it all starts, you know where, Carlos? Mm-hmm. Early childhood education.
And
that's
Senator,
where it all begins.
Senator
Mm-hmm.
Garcia, you also want to help young people and their health. And one bill you introduced was to ban 18-year-olds and younger from using tanning beds. Can you talk a little bit about that measure?
What was the measure? I'm sorry?
The bill that you introduced that looks to take care of young people's health by banning those who are under the age of 18 from using tanning beds.
Oh, you're talking about the tanning bill. I just introduced that in Public Affairs last night, and it went through unanimously. And I was being sponsored. Actually, the people came to me was the Cancer Society, and they're very opposed to that because young girls mostly are the ones that are doing that, can get skin cancer, and the rates that I saw were pretty severe. I don't want any young kid, young girl, especially today, they're doing all this makeup and whatever on TV, and they go out to tan and make themselves dark and beautiful. You know, parents need to not let them do that because they could be exposed to skin cancer later. And that's why I did that one. I introduced that bill 2 years ago, I believe, and it went through all the way to judiciary, and they killed it in judiciary. Because judiciary is mostly made up of attorneys, now, male attorneys.
In that bill, a person who owns or operates a tanning facility, if they violate the proposed law, then they face a misdemeanor and up to $1,000 for repeated offenses. How will this measure, if it passes, how will it be monitored?
How would it be monitored?
Correct.
I don't know which agency would monitor that, but I would imagine that CYFD, it deals with children under 18. We have, I think the penalties are $250. They're all misdemeanors, $250 and $500, and then up to $1,000 if they do it repeatedly and don't obey the law.
All right, switching gears now, Senator Garcia, Governor Martinez is pushing real hard for legislation that would repeal a law allowing undocumented individuals from obtaining a driver's license. Is she going too far by running ads to promote this issue?
I'm afraid that our governor is following suit on what Arizona did, and she must be very close to that. Those people there, I don't know. It's going to take a lot of debate. It will be a very hard vote for me, given that I'm from a community made up of mostly Hispanic and Mexican people. And, some of them are so fearful already that they're leaving. They're leaving their homes in Las Cruces and other surrounding rural areas because they don't want to be caught up in that. They're afraid they're just going to be deported. And they're afraid of our governor, no doubt. So what they're doing is just moving to other nations. Some of them are going to Costa Rica. Some of them are going to Far East Asia. I mean, they're all traveling outside of New Mexico because of this one measure. Now, in the executive order that our governor put on that, I did not get to see it or read it, but I'm assured by my colleagues in public affairs that it says that the police shall. It's a mandate from her. They shall check. And what we passed last night in public affairs is a countermeasure to that we shall not allow police to do that because, in fact, it's a federal law. And how can we as a state be enforcing a federal law? There has to be a lot of debate, and I think there needs to be a lot of debate between the two countries and come up with some solution, because if you think about it, let's say, and there was a movie made, Not One Mexican Left or something like that, where let's say that all the Mexicans left. Let's say that all the Asians left. Let's say that all the people from wherever in the world left. I mean, we want it to be a pure white America. What's going to happen to our economy? I don't know who's going to go and clean our toilets and serve us in restaurants, because every restaurant I go to here in Santa Fe, they're all from Mexico. And elsewhere, Guatemala, Costa Rica, they're from everywhere. And I don't know how we should deal with that, but I would hope that it would be like an incentive to those that have not committed a crime. If they've been here a certain number of years and they have learned English and have no criminal record, they should be allowed to stay and continue working on those. Who's going to do all those things? I keep wondering, who's going to do our yard work and things like that. So I'm concerned about our economy, tell you quite frankly, because I don't know who's going to be doing those service jobs anymore. If they make every, if they want just native people here, then the only ones that should stay here are the Native Americans. They're the only natives. We're all a melting pot from everywhere in the world. And how can we put aside? I resented that they just alluded to Mexico. It's not just Mexico. There's people here from Afghanistan, from Turkey, from Philippines, from Cambodia, from all over the world, from Haiti,
And Senator Garcia, that executive order from the governor that you mentioned requires
Yes.
or would allow police officers to ask the immigration status of those who are in custody, what their immigration status is. Your question that you posed a couple of weeks ago in a press conference was, are we New Mexico or are we Arizona? Do you still feel the same way?
What did I say? Oh, that we're New Mexico, not Arizona. I still feel that way. And in committees, in education committees, in public affairs, everything that comes to us is either from Arizona or Florida or Texas. I mean, don't we have qualified, intelligent people in New Mexico? That's one question I would raise. It's always, and I just mentioned that in education yesterday. Why are we coming with all these bills from Florida or from Arizona or from Texas? Don't we have any initiatives here? Don't we have any brain power? I mean, we do a lot of it. And if we all work together, we can make New Mexico a better place. I know that we can.
Senator Garcia, what type of message do you think the governor is sending by proposing such acts for immigration, specifically the one that revokes the driver's licenses? A lot of Hispanic groups are calling the governor racist. What do you think?
They're calling her what?
Racist.
Racist. Well, I wouldn't call her racist as I would call her divisive. She's dividing our own people, and I don't know what kind of strategy that might be. She's dividing Hispanics from here, Hispanics from there, from Mexico, Mexicans from there. She's dividing a whole nation, a whole population of people that are, as far as we know, Americans. We all pay taxes. My father's from Mexico. I was brought up, born here in Doniana Village, and I paid taxes all my life. I've worked all my life, studied all my life. A lot of these young people from Mexico are very intelligent. Those that are already in college with a lot of the Lotto scholarships, they're terrified to have to go back. They don't have a life in Mexico. They've made it here. They've educated themselves. They've learned the language. They want to work. They're very productive people. And that's one thing. I think that they're being kind of like divided. It's like turning one group against another. That's my fear. I wouldn't call her racist, but I certainly would call her divisive.
Now, if this legislation passes, and lots of driver's licenses would be revoked from those who are undocumented, how do you think that will impact a family?
It would impact a family in many ways, not only from Mexico, but I would imagine from Afghanistan or Turkey or wherever. The entire family usually doesn't travel to the United States together. There may be a family of 6 to 10. And so you're going to be dividing those families. Some of them will end up in Mexico, some in Turkey, and some here that are already naturalized. I hate the thought of any children being terrified of policemen coming in there like they did in Alamogordo last year. And in fact, the sheriff from there lost the case and was cited $150,000. They were going into the schools, into the classrooms, and intimidating little children, you know. I heard from the Catholic diocese straight away to put a stop to it, but I didn't know how to put a stop to it. But, you know, it was some big, the reason that was given to me by the sheriff himself was that they had gotten this big grant from the federal government. It had a name, I forget the name, but you know what, if you just get a big grant from Washington, should it be to do that? Could it not be put to better use to fight the cartels, to stop the drug flow, rather than going into classrooms and terrifying children? Those are my comments on that.
And Senator Garcia, with a few minutes left in the program, Senator Jeff Bingaman recently announced his retirement. Do you think he's leaving too soon?
Well, I don't know. I was shocked by it. I had no idea that he was going to retire. But you know what? After 30 years, I guess he's tired. But yet the minute he lasted even longer, I think, and he's still around. But I don't know. I was shocked by Jeff's announcement that he was retiring. There will be a big long list of people running from both parties, I would imagine, to see who takes that open seat.
Senator Mary Jane Garcia, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. Remember, you can watch this interview online at krwg.org. You can also follow us on Twitter and be our friend on Facebook. I'm Carlos Correa. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you so much, Carlos. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Your Legislators is a production of KRWG Broadcasting. Copyright New Mexico State University Board of Regents.